I want to welcome everyone to the Stearns Road Tour today. We're going to be going through a map that we've provided in all of your booklets today. We'll be hitting several points along the way, just giving you a little minute or two key highlights of those points. Here we are at I'd say the feature of the tour, which is the bridge over the Fox River. As you can see, this is a combination of the Fox River Trail that comes down the west bank of the river. We have the Prairie Path on the other side of the river also. And then you see this multi-use path that's going to be, I think there's many people anxious to use the path. A couple weeks ago I was lucky enough to get up on there and we walked across, and when you're out there looking at the river, it's really just a fantastic sight. We have all this causeway that you see, all this stone that was put in, basically this was all put in just to get the foundations for the bridge in, to set the structural steel. There were, big cranes out here for several months setting the steel. All this comes out after the project. It gets all the way cut back, all the way back out to this riprap trail here. The bridge deck was scheduled to be poured, actually the first pour was scheduled to be done today, right Dave? And because of the rain last night and some more predicted rain this afternoon, they postponed that. But the pour will start tomorrow. They scheduled it for tomorrow. So that's always an exciting time on a project like this. You'll see the form liners just turned out fantastic. This is all concrete made to mimic the actual limestone that's used on the railroad bridge next door. That's the same railroad that we ran all along that we showed you down at McLean Boulevard. Obviously they'll be putting in, they just left the gap here in the multi-use path for the access for the workers right now. Then also there'll be some 30-inch beams, steel beams that are going to span between this abutment, connecting this here, and that'll get a little capping stone on it. The deck up on the multi-use path is a hardwood lumber, and that's the way that's going to stay. And then ultimately there's going to be a roof on this deck too, so that if someone were walking along and something came over the parapet wall, then no one's in danger there. But really is a beautiful, beautiful crossing of the river here. Yeah, they drilled the caissons, built the piers. They come in and they just set the structural steel. This bridge is, the wood is just basically for worker protection. They work there to set at the top of this overhang, that's where actually the concrete's going to be poured to. There's plywood that's set all along the top of the steel. So this wood is really not in use right now. It's safe for people to walk underneath. Someone doesn't drop a hammer or something like that. But it's strictly for safety. Yeah. Yeah. So that all comes out. Also, when you build a river bridge like this and you don't have much access, they're going to end up stripping the plywood off the bottom of the deck, because that comes out eventually, because all you'll see is the concrete. So the workers will be able to work from this platform while they strip that, and then they'll keep passing the plywood out, from the river, and then they'll work backwards and start pulling this lagging out as they go. So it's kind of a dual purpose for that. You'll see along here there's a lot of concern about the slope and the water. There's a big drainage area coming through here, so you'll see these riprap ditch checks. Those are just in here to kind of slow the velocity of the water down. That's all working its way eventually down towards the river. A lot of environmental work was done, and the eastbound side is a little further along. This is what they cut down to clay, and then they put in some big stone. Then they come in and cap it with the smaller stone, and then this is a trimmer here that they'll come through and they trim that to within a 1/10 of an inch to final grade, and then they set the baskets that you saw we drove through, and then the concrete will be right after that. So the concrete will, Doug, probably be later either this week or next week, I would imagine. Just a note on the schedule. I think I could really address the schedule of the whole project at once, which is great news. It's on schedule. I mean, the whole, you'll see when we get to the east side of the river, there'll be more pavement in. Well, they didn't have the grade differences that we have on this side there. So they got a little ahead. They've already got their concrete in over on that side. But in general, it's not because they're behind here. This was just built into their schedule as massive excavation. But the river bridge was behind for a while. We ran into some foundation issues, but those have all been resolved and worked its way back. And as of the last progress meeting, they were 2 days behind schedule, which is November, which is no problem to catch up on that. This is point B of our tour. This is the McLean Boulevard intersection with the future Stearns Road. The most interesting part of this area is the bridge here that we're putting in for the Canadian National Railroad. As you can see, it wasn't misaligned. They built the bridge to the south of the existing tracks. And what they're going to do here, actually just later this month, in a couple weeks, what that bridge is sitting on right now is just temporary concrete. They drove piles and they built a temporary abutment. And what they're going to do, and this has been coordinated heavily with the Canadian National through the guys on the project here, but the Canadian National is going to give us a 12-hour window. They'll come in, they'll take out the existing rail, the existing bridge, and then this bridge here will be on a roller system, and they're just going to slide it right onto the abutment. It was designed so there's the concrete pier for this is underneath the existing track. So it's just going to slide right in, and then this concrete that you see here is going to be eventually taken out. There were a couple portions of the bridge, the piles that are going to be used for the future wing wall, so it kind of saves money in the long run. They're not just going to get cut off, they're going to be incorporated into the future wing walls and the retaining walls along McLean. McLean's going to be 4 lanes wide here instead of what it was it's basically going to be twice as wide as it was. Also on the west side of McLean, underneath the railroad bridge, will be the multi-use path that's going to come down and run along McLean, eventually cross 31, and then go into the path system on the other side of 31. Also, this will be a signalized intersection, and there's going to be new signals put in at the intersection with Route 31, and they'll be interconnected, so it'll make for easy pass-through here. But this is a pretty neat part of the project. The top of that, on top of that bridge now is just a belly. It's 5/8" steel plate. They'll come in and they'll put ballast in and ties and a rail, and the trains never know there's a bridge there. It's a ballasted deck, just like you'd see off the bridge. This is a really neat view here because you can see the steel girders, you can see the plywood that is hanging from those girders, okay? There's straps going around, the plywood's there, and then about 50 feet down you'll see the lower level of reinforcement, and then another 100 foot down you'll see it looks more consistently green. That's because there's another level, there's 2 layers of reinforcement steel on the deck, okay? And then ultimately they'll come through and they'll pour, it's a 7.5-inch concrete deck, and that'll be poured the whole way. You see these little studs that are sticking up off the beams, only in certain portions of the bridge, and those are designed basically the concrete is good in compression, the steel in tension. That makes the steel girder, the concrete deck becomes a part of that girder. It's called a composite deck. But basically you're taking advantage of the strength of the concrete to help the steel section there. No, it's staged construction. There's actually 3 different days, but they'll pour certain sections. They try to take the deflection out of the bridge first, then they'll come back and they'll pour over the piers, because where the piers support is, you don't want that deflection cracking the concrete. So it's in the plans, and I think they made a slight adjustment to the plans as a contractor's allowed to do. After the deck hardens, usually after 7 or 14 days, depending on the strength of the concrete, they'll go on underneath again and they'll take all that plywood down. So, and then you'll see on the end, that's an expansion joint that allows for the temperature contraction and expansion of the deck. And that's all calibrated to the day of the deck pour, the temperature. And then they'll fill this in here with an approach slab, it's called. It's basically a little piece that makes the bridge deck and the roadway portion match. It's your little filler piece in here, and that's also reinforced. So, and then you'll see in the middle, you'll see some reinforcement sticking up. That's where that median we were going to talk about, that's where that is, those line that's about 4 feet wide right along that middle girder.
Match this.
It'll match this, go running all the way through. Yeah, you were asking about that.